Hi, friends, and welcome to Exploring the World from Within, where we journey through our inner worlds with compassion and courage. My name is Luisa Fernanda, and I'm going to be your host for this podcast. I am super excited to be here, finally recording this first episode. This podcast has been in my heart for years at this point, and it's taken me a while to finally get to the place where I felt confident enough to start recording and talking about all the different things that I want to talk about: anxiety, depression, ADHD, eating disorders, shame, guilt, loss. There are so many things that I'm going to be covering in this podcast and talking about that I believe are very, very important for us to talk about. And I do know that there is a ton of content out there that is exploring all of these things. I think we have become a lot better about talking about all of these things. And I hope to bring a fresh perspective on everything. Actually, that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to make this podcast, because sometimes you may have an idea and you think, well, so many people are already doing it. Why should I do it? Just one more person added there. But the fact is, each of us are unique, and what we contribute to the world, nobody else could contribute, because we've been created for a specific purpose and in a very unique, wonderful way. So I've had this in my heart and it's not going away. There are so many times where I go through something, especially in the past year, and I'm like, oh, this would be a great thing to talk about in the podcast, or, this is something that I would really love to have a conversation about. My vision for this podcast is to eventually have some guests and actually have conversations with people, not just myself being here, but for now, you're stuck with me. It's called Exploring the World from Within because each of us, it's our own world. And we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. We have the lens of our own experience and perspective. And just like people talk about the rose colored lenses when you just meet somebody and you're starting to date and everything seems perfect. The same way, we see the world through all of the things that we've experienced, the things that we have been told and we have received, and just so many things that come into play when it comes to our view of our own lives and the world. And this has so many repercussions that I think just the knowledge of it is not enough to understand the depths of what that means. I also realized that as I was growing up, I was taught to explore my inner world in a way that I guess most people were not. I took it for granted. I was raised with so much wisdom and given many tools emotionally and logically to deal with life. And I really thought that was everybody's reality. I was born and raised Colombian, went to a private school, which is a lot more normal in Colombia than it is here. It's a lot more affordable than it is in the US. At my school, they taught us a lot of things, not just in terms of academics, but a lot when it came to developing our emotional intelligence and how to deal with conflicts. They imparted certain values. And I thought that was just what everybody went through. I grew up in a bubble. I really did. Mainly because my mom was a helicopter mom. My dad died when I was like 3 years old. So with her being responsible for me and my brother, she was definitely always on top of it. She loved us so much. She loves us so much. She's still here, thank God. She just gave her life for us, really. And she took care of us to an extreme, to where if she didn't know my friends, I wasn't going to their place. If she didn't know their parents, I wasn't going to that house. If she didn't have some sort of contact, or she just knew that I was going to be in a safe environment, I was just not going. So she definitely sheltered myself and my brother, myself a little bit more. There's a lot of things that I never experienced. And I'm grateful for that, because I do believe that growing up, she preserved my innocence. And I am very grateful for that. I'm also very grateful for a lot of the decisions that she made for me as a child, because obviously I didn't have the understanding or the knowledge to make good decisions back then, or understand the repercussions of what those decisions were going to bring. One of those things, and this is the topic for today, was her making the decision of not medicating me when I was diagnosed with ADHD. So I remember I was first grade, would be second grade American school system. And my teacher called in my mom into school because apparently I was not working the same way that most kids in my class were. And I remember being taken to a psychologist or something like that, and them making me do puzzles and fill out some stuff. And eventually they got to my mom and they were like, yeah, so she has ADHD. And I remember them saying, we have some medication, blah, blah, blah. And she was very adamant to not have me medicated. She was just like, nope, I'm not medicating my daughter. I'm not giving her any of that. Not happening. So they ended up working out with my school's psychologist, some kind of therapy in school. So I would get taken out of class to go play with puzzles and do other kinds of behavioral therapy, which for myself at the time, I didn't even know I was in therapy. I just knew I got to skip math so I could go play with puzzles. So I was a happy camper. I really had no complaints when it came to that. And all note of my ADHD, like all mention of that would mainly be at home because she was always saying how hyperactive I was and all different types of comments surrounding that specific aspect of things. But in my school, they gave me therapy, behavioral therapy, I think it was. I don't really remember. And they helped me learn to manage it a little bit better. Years go by. We're now in seventh grade, so eighth grade American. And I'm still that kid in the class. I'm still getting distracted. I still have my symptoms. They don't just go away. You just kind of learn how to deal with them. And my teacher that year, we had a homeroom teacher. So besides from your like specific subject teachers, one of them would get assigned the class and they would be the homeroom teacher. And the homeroom teacher was in charge of notices and any kind of disciplinary action in the class as a whole. And they were also in charge of seating arrangements. So at the start of the year, normally you would pick wherever you wanted to sit. And if you wanted to sit next to your best friend, you could do that. As the year went by and they started looking at the grades and how you were doing and the class dynamic, the homeroom teacher had the power to change the seating arrangements. And I remember throughout this year, they put me everywhere they could think. I was front and center. I was next to the most brilliant people, focused people, disciplined people in the classroom. They were just trying to get me to focus. And that's not how my brain worked. Once the lesson was done and they started going into questions, or after a certain amount of time in the class, my brain just would drift and I would do my own thing. Turns out all the people that they were putting me next to started complaining because they couldn't help me focus and I was distracting them. So eventually my teacher gave up and he was like, you know what? She's just going to do whatever she's going to do. And you put me in the back of the classroom in a corner. And that was my best year. My grades went up. I was able to do whatever I wanted to do in that corner. Like teachers just knew to not bother with me basically. But it actually helped me. It was almost like it gave me the room that I needed to figure out how to manage my own ADHD and just figure it out on my own basically. So that was really great. And after that, I just had my own system with school. I was actually a good student for the most part, geography and history. Ugh, could never. But everything else, it was not that bad. I got by pretty well. And eventually, when it came to making a decision of where I wanted to go to college, I knew I wanted to get as far away from home as possible because even though I was sheltered and I was in a bubble, I knew that I was sheltered and I was in a bit of a bubble. And I had the opportunity to travel quite a bit at that point. So I knew that I wanted to expand my horizons, even if it was going to be uncomfortable, even if it was going to be like maybe unnecessarily difficult, because I could have stayed home and I would have had a much easier time. But I wanted the challenge. I wanted to know what the world was like. I wanted to explore it and I wanted to get out of that bubble that I knew I had grew up in. So I started applying with my best friend to colleges in the US. My mom she's always supportive in her own way, but when it comes to you having your own goals, even those people who love you and want the best for you and maybe are secretly wanting you to win, they might say things that are not very encouraging. So when I was talking to my mom about it, she was like, "Well, we can try, but don't get your hopes up." She told me, "If you don't get a scholarship, there's no way I'm paying for that." Because, like, we didn't have that type of money, you know? So there was conditionals to me being able to do what I wanted to do. And I was always praying about it, like, "Lord, is this something you want me to do? Like, how am I supposed to make this happen? I kind of want to go, but I also had options to stay." I didn't really want to stay. And the only thing really holding me back was the fact that my aunt was sick. She got cancer that last year. So right before I started senior year, we found out that she had cancer. And she's like a mom to me. She raised me. She had been living with us since I was like 7 or 8 years old. That was my mom's oldest sister. She just was always there. Actually, my aunt was more of a mom than my mom was. My mom was more like a dad because she was very disciplinary and strict and just the rules person. She had very high standards too. So that was something that I always had to live up to a bit. But I'm grateful because my mom is also a wonderful leader and a wonderful woman, and I admire her so much. So tough love all the way around, but I'm grateful for that. But my aunt was more of a mom. I could talk to her about things. I could come to her about relationship drama and whatever was going on in my life. And I knew that she was going to be supportive and she was a little bit more soft in her approach and encouraging. So I remember that was one of the things that I had in my heart. That was the one thing that I was like, I don't know if I want to leave because if I leave and something happens to her while I'm away, you start thinking about those things. So I kept praying about it. And I think my ADHD during this year really helped me because if you have ADHD, once you get something in your mind, it's almost like you just go for it. And I had trained my brain, my scattered brain enough to know how to study for the different things, how to make things happen, how to fill up these applications. And again, my school really helped me by giving me certain tools that I was utilizing to make it easier for me to get things done. So whole year we were going through a bunch of applications, applying for scholarships, blah blah blah. And I remember we were praying with my family one Saturday because we used to pray every single Saturday, got together as family, aunts, uncles. You put like 25, 30 people in a house, and that was my family every single Saturday. We were praying as a family, and they had brought somebody that was gifted. And she approached me after prayer, and she was like, "I don't know what this means, but you're leaving." And I just looked at her and I was like, "Okay." I don't know how, but okay. And just a couple weeks later, I got my acceptance letter and then I got my scholarship. And I looked at my mom like, "See, you told me not to get my hopes up." But here it is. So I am going. She didn't want me to go, of course, because she's always been so protective, but she knew that she wanted to support me. Anyway, came to the US as a freshman into a university where I never did onboarding or I had never visited. I have never been to the town where I was going. I just moved. And the first week of me being there, not even a week, it was just a couple of days because my mom came to drop me off and help me move and settle down. And the day that she was supposed to leave, we had a hurricane. We don't get these in Colombia, so that was an experience. But anyway, I'm at the university. I started going out, I started meeting people, and I am not one for small talk. So a lot of people would say, no, you kind of go too deep too fast. But at the same time, they would enjoy the conversation. I always started having this deep conversations with people about their childhood and how they came to be who they were, things like that. And it started opening up my view of the world and my reality to the realities of other people and what so many people's different backgrounds are. Eventually, I ended up having a conversation with someone about ADHD, just talking about assignments and things that we needed to do. And it just kind of went out there that I mentioned, oh, yeah, I have ADHD too. And they asked me, have you gone to the disability office already? Because you can get extensions on your assignments and papers and things like that. And I just looked at them super confused. Like, what do you mean disability? They said, yeah, because ADHD is a disability. I just looked at them like, I'm not tracking. What do you mean disability? No, I do not have a disability. ADHD is my superpower. And I'm not going to the disability office because I do not accept that terminology. But it hit me in that moment that the entire culture that I was now a part of believed that ADHD was a disability. And that completely shook me because I was never raised with that mindset. My mom refused to medicate me from day one. I went to therapy my entire life, all the way from when I had memory up to when I graduated college. I had a therapist. I was going to talk to somebody about whatever was going on in my life. So it was always a constant, and I was getting help navigating certain things. At some point, my mom and I went to therapy together because we had some relationship issues that we needed to figure out. And her kind of going through therapy with me and us growing in a relationship was also a super transformative experience that is the root of my belief that people can truly change, which sometimes, a lot of the times, backfired a little bit on me because I truly believe in people. And when I see someone, I tend to look at their potential and I tend to see in people sometimes what they cannot see themselves. But that is very common. I think a lot of people saw in me some things that I didn't see myself. So, but ADHD. Or was I? Give me a second. Okay, yeah. So she never gave me medication, always in therapy, but never was titled or labeled as a disability or anything negative. It was just like, I'm a little different than the rest of people. And that's just who I am. Just like some people have ginger hair and it's not as common. It's just a trait. But then I'm in this society, in this culture where people think this is a disability. And I'm like, no, it's not. I was actually able to graduate with a dual degree in 3 years, partially because I came in with credits. I did IB. For anybody who doesn't know what that is International Baccalaureate, and it's intense. If you're doing it, kudos to you. You got this. You'll get through it. And college is going to be easier than senior year or junior year in high school because freaking IB. But I was able to graduate in 3 years. And I don't think I'm like the smartest person in the room. I've definitely never been the best student or anything like that. I just knew how to utilize my brain. I just knew that I needed to do certain things. So first of all, I needed to keep an active lifestyle. Because it really helped with my depression and anxiety and managing that. While I was in the university, apparently they discovered I have high functioning anxiety and depression as well, which I have been healed of that. Thank you, Lord. But I dealt with that for a very long time. I also dealt with an eating disorder for a very long time. You see people and you never know what people are going through. You would have never known. I'm such a happy-go-lucky, bubbly person. You would have never known. But I was dealing with that high functioning anxiety and depression and eating disorder, ADHD, juggling all of it, and graduated in 3 years. And I just had certain things that I knew I needed to do in order for me to do that. Because I do truly believe if I did it, you can do it too. Because I'm not that. I'm not, don't have a crazy high IQ. I just was given tools and was raised with a lot of wisdom that helped me navigate things. It's like if you don't have the right tool for the job, it's going to be very hard for you to do it. And unfortunately, one thing that I've noticed about the education system in the United States is that it's very focused on just grades and the subject matter. B, apparently is very political, which it makes no sense to me. And they don't give you any tools or training or anything to help you develop your emotional intelligence. And the emotional intelligence part of it is probably the most important thing. They have done studies that have shown that a high emotional intelligence quotient trumps any kind of intelligence. It is a higher determinant than intelligence or accolades or skills over whether someone is going to be successful or not. And y'all don't have that here in the States. It's very sad. So that's partially why I feel like I need to share this. So some things that I did. Have a super active lifestyle. I was always going to the gym. I loved the classes. I grew up in dance and theater kid and stuff like that. So I was always trying to move, volleyball, whatever I could get moving. I was never a gym girl, like going and lifting weights and running. It's something that I've gotten into recently, but that was never something I actually like to do. So if you're somebody that you're like, I just don't like working out, just move. Find something that you enjoy that gets you moving. Skating. I used to skate too. So I would go out like skating. My mom tried to get me into tennis. I did not like tennis. I did like badminton, but it's not as common to find like a badminton court somewhere. I enjoyed skating. So sometimes I would just put on my skates and just skate around the apartment complex or wherever I was. Bicycle, I do like riding sometimes. It helps me clear my head. Just going for a walk, dancing, any type of fitness classes, I would be doing that. The fitness marshal, y'all. Peep me in any kind of time, in any space, just with a fitness marshal 30-minute sweat stash. But it was super important for me to have an active lifestyle because I knew it was going to help me manage my hyperactivity, the H in my ADHD. Because if I didn't, I was not focusing. It was not going to happen. My body had to be tired in order for my mind to function. That was just how I work. That's just what I know. If my body's not tired, my brain is not working properly. I'm not going to be able to sit through a 2-hour class, which I did have one of those in college, and it was torturous. And it was art history too. Oh, that was a hard one. But I was not going to be able to sit through that class if I didn't get some sort of workout beforehand. Just no way. Eating healthy. With my eating disorder, this was very challenging. And I am so grateful that the Lord just this year was finally able to heal me. I was finally surrendered enough for him to heal me from this eating disorder that I had been dealing with for over 10 years. Wow, it's been a long time. For me, eating healthy was not just about like how I fit into my clothes. It did have a lot to do with that. But it was also about the fact that I knew that my brain just didn't work well if I was having a lot of fast food and sugars and things like that. I'm probably going to get into this topic in another podcast. But I do want to say, since I'm already on it, with my relationship with food, there was so many different facets. It was not just about how I looked and things like that, because that definitely played a part in it. But I also had a knowledge that what I ate was going to affect how I performed throughout the day. And there were certain foods that just made me feel better, more energetic, like I could actually focus. And then there were certain foods that would make me feel like I couldn't focus to save my life. And it would just have my brain all over the place. So learning those things, and sometimes it was by trial and error. I don't think we are all different. So it's something that you have to go through in your own journey, getting to know yourself. That's like the most important thing. But I had a very specific diet. And then the way that I structured myself when it came to studying, you were never going to catch me pulling an all-nighter. It was not going to happen because my school, they didn't just teach me to like the subjects, they taught me how to be a good student. So I'm going to give you my 2 cents on how to write a paper, for example. I broke down the paper into smaller bits. And I got this from tangent. I got this from a podcast that I did during high school that was about procrastination and productivity. because I was super interested about how some people were able to get a lot done and some people just had the same hours in the day, but they didn't really do much. And I was like, how does this work? And I found out while doing that podcast and doing my research and all that, many times the reason why we procrastinate a task is because it feels so daunting, so big, that it is hard for our brain to just move. We basically get paralyzed by it. So the best way to deal with that is going to be to break that task down. Ever since then, this is how I write my papers. So going back to that, I would break it down. I would do first one day to figure out what I was going to write about. So understanding the prompt and figuring out the topic and any like little details. That was it. Done. 15, 20 minutes. Because that was my focus time. Sometimes, unless I really got into it, I wouldn't focus for more than 15, 20 minutes. So I was not setting goals for myself that were going to take me longer than 15, 20 minutes. So that was day one. Day two, I would do all of the research surrounding that topic. And my school taught me how to do research, how to scan papers. I would not read everything that I found. I would just use Control F and search for the words that I needed and just read the context. And I would just compile a list of links to whichever papers I was going to be using. And that was just day two, 15, 20 minutes. Again, I'm not committing myself for anything else than that because my brain is just not going to work that way. Day three, I would go through the research papers and I would gather the information that I needed, skim through them, just like fast reading, find the information, highlight it, copy paste into the Word document, and then arrange them in a certain way. And that was it. Then the next day, I would go ahead and structure my paragraphs a little bit more. I would start writing, just go ahead and write everything, just free flow. No editing, didn't need it to sound perfect, didn't need it to look a certain way. I just wrote it down based on all the research that I had already done. I had paragraph 1, 2, 3, conclusion, and then writing the intro at last. And then the next day, I would actually review it. So I would actually read it, be like, I make absolutely no sense here. And redacted whatever I needed to. And I would repeat that 2 or 3 more times, depending. Normally, you have enough time between assignments and things like that to where you can go through this process and it's not going to be stressful. Because if you leave it until the last minute, it's because you're thinking about writing the entire paper. You just need thinking about what is the first thing I need to do. Just do that one thing. And I was able to manage school full time. I was actually taking extra credits some semesters because I wanted to graduate fast. And I was working part time. And I still got to go out with friends. And I had a relationship that I honestly regret because I feel like I didn't get to enjoy college as much. I would have enjoyed college a little bit more if I hadn't been in that relationship. But, you live and learn, you learn. That's my 2 cents on how to write a paper. And you can apply this to pretty much any project, anything else that you have going on. If you're thinking about the massive thing, just like the end product, especially with ADHD, you're going to get super overwhelmed and then you're just going to go paralysis mode and then nothing's going to get done. It's the same thing with keeping my room organized. So I actually grew up with a little bit of OCD. If my bed wasn't made to where both sides were like equally balanced, I couldn't sleep. Like I would try and I would eventually end up waking up like at 2, 3 a.m. just flipping the bed over and having to remake it again for me to get just a couple hours of sleep because I was not really waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. So I learned how to keep my place organized. And for someone with ADHD, I know it's very easy for us to just throw things and things to become chaotic very easily. And I think that's one side of the spectrum. And then on the other side, you have people like me that are super OCD. And if everything is not where it needs to be and it's not organized, then my brain doesn't function. That's another thing I had to learn about myself. My space needed to be clean and clear if I was going to be able to get stuff done. If it wasn't, I couldn't focus. I think at the end of the day, a lot of this is really an invitation for you to learn more about yourselves. There are so many people out there that know more about the Kardashians than they know about themselves. Because sometimes there's a lot of shame in who they are. Sometimes they feel a lot of guilt. And I know I've been in those places where I just didn't feel good about who I didn't feel good about the person that I was seeing when I looked in the mirror. And many times, I think, especially in our society, we have been geared to distract ourselves in other people's lives when the most important life is your own. And getting to know yourself is going to be a super important part of you really being able to live with yourself and live your best life, to manage whatever you have going on. I think the reason why my anxiety and my depression was high functioning was because I knew myself well enough that I knew what I needed to keep going. I was also trained I was also raised with a no excuses mentality, so that kind of played a little bit into that as well. It's like you're not gonna let your feelings control what you do. You're gonna do whatever you need to do in spite of your feelings. So I think that also played a big part into that mentality role. But if you're out there and you have ADHD, the first thing that I'm gonna challenge is that mentality, that concept of it as a disability. It is not a disability. It's like saying having blue eyes is a disability. No, it's not a disability. So I'm going to challenge you to challenge that and to reshape that frame of mind, to think my brain is just different. And you actually have a superpower. Do you know how much you can do when you have ADHD? The uniqueness of your brain? ADHD brains are so cool because they are very creative. Unfortunately, they don't work for the systems in the society that we live in, but it doesn't mean that we cannot operate in them. And when you learn to embrace your superpower instead of trying to fight against it, and life changes. And I wish I could see people start to do this, but I know a lot of people who started to embrace their ADHD. And you all know Mel Robbins, and I think she talks a little bit about this in her books and stuff like that. But you have a creative brain, and that's something that you gotta nurture. Because if you neglect it, it's gonna act up. So it's like a child. If a child is being neglected, they're gonna throw tantrums. If their needs are not being met, they're gonna act up. Not because they're bad kids, but because there's a need there that is not being met. So when your ADHD is acting up, is because there is a need that you're not fulfilling for yourself, if that makes sense. And a lot of how you see the world is about your relationship with yourself. So if you see yourself as disabled, then you're going to find that the world is not fit for you. You're going to find obstacles. If you see your ADHD as a superpower, you're going to start seeing opportunities where there were. You're going to start seeing the many creative ways in which you can navigate life that you weren't able to see before. And I think the way that we are made, there is a purpose for every aspect of your personality. Like one of the things that I grew up thinking was such a bad thing was how stubborn I am. And obviously, my mom didn't like it, but she's the same way, equally stubborn. I got it from her. And it was always such a negative thing. But I've been through so many different things. I've faced challenges and just really hard situations that if it wasn't because of how stubborn I am, I don't think I would have made it through. So many times, those things that people have criticized about you, about your personality, aspects of who you are that are painted as a negative thing, they're also necessary. And I think God uses all of it. He created us, He knows us, He made you exactly who you are for a purpose. And I am so against people saying that ADHD is a disability because that's just how my brain is. And it's never been a disability to me. I've had to navigate life differently than most people around me. My brain just works differently than most people around me. But because my brain has worked differently than most people around me, I also have been able to do things that most people around me cannot do. So it really is about how you frame it. With ADHD, I do encourage you, and with most mental health stuff, I do want to encourage people not to take medication. I am very against medication. A, because my mom decided not to give me medication, and that had a very positive impact in my life. B, because I do not believe in the pharmaceutical industry. I really feel like whatever they do, it fixes one thing and then it damages 10 more things. And before you know it, you have 10 to 15 pills that you're taking. And like, what for? When all it started was just a headache. Maybe you just had migraines and all of a sudden you have half of your body's not working. So I don't believe in the pharmaceutical industry. I will put that out there. You can get angry if you want. That's my opinion. And I believe that a lot of things that we struggle with can be improved by having better habits and taking better care of ourselves, which is very frustrating when I got to college and I started going to. I actually went to the psychiatrist because I was going to the psychologist first, like every so often, and dealing with different things. And my eating disorder actually came up into that. And me telling her all sorts of different things. At some point, she was like, "Hey, I think you need to go to the psychiatrist." So I got my appointment. I went there, and he was super adamant in medicating me. He was like, "If we don't put you on this medication, I'm afraid you're gonna kill yourself." And I looked at him like, "Bro, yeah, I'm depressed. I'm anxious. Like, I'm going through it sometimes, but I'm not gonna kill myself. Like, it's just not gonna happen." And the fact that he put that fear on me, it just made me question a lot of things. It made me wonder how many people are going to the psychiatrist for help and they end up just feeling worse leaving. That's messed up. And secondarily, they never asked me about my habits. They never asked me about, like, how I was taking care of myself, if I was working out, what kind of things I was doing on a day-to-day basis, what kind of conversations was I having with people? Was I surrounding myself with people who were encouraging, or was I surrounding myself with people who were constantly beating me down? What was my environment like? All these different things that play a major role into how we operate on a day-to-day basis. None of that. Just how do you feel? What are your thoughts? And then based on that, let's medicate you. And I'm so against that because first you need to look at your environment, at your habits, at your exercise habits specifically, and your eating habits, and how you're taking care of yourself, and who are the people who are influencing you. And many times when those things are dealt with, then the repercussion is you will start feeling better. I hope that some of the things that I shared today were valuable to you, that they help change your perspective a little bit, and that maybe you got some tools from today to help you navigate whatever you're going through. And if you are like me and you have ADHD, or you're going through anxiety, depression, which are topics I will be talking about in another episode, eating disorders, that's for another episode as well. Just know you're not alone. And whatever they have told you, if it's not encouraging, if it's not empowering, it might not necessarily be true. I hope this episode blessed you. I am super excited to start this journey. Next episode is going to be a bit deeper. We were in the kiddie pool today, but just so you can get to know me a little bit. And yes, my ADHD is going to act up a little bit on this episodes where my brain is just going to go wild places. And I will try to keep it as streamlined as possible to make it easy to listen to. But if you're a fellow ADHDer, I hope you're in for the ride. um, but yeah, leave a comment if you have anything to say. If you disagreed with anything, I welcome that. Like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe because there's a lot more of this coming, and hopefully eventually we'll have actual guests and be getting into some really, really good conversations. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.